Everyone, my name is Roushaunda Williams, and I'm going to speak as loud as I can. Thank you for inviting me today. I have worked for the last 20 plus years as a bartender at the illustrious Palmer House Hilton. I am a member of Unite Here Local 1, and that's a hospitality union. I also sit on the executive board of the Illinois AFL-CIO. Unbeknownst to me, my path to this moment started over 30 years ago. I worked a few years for the Illinois Department on Aging. I have a degree in sociology. And then I spent about a decade working for a DCFS. Other notables is I've worked for St. Martin de Porres, which is a shelter for homeless women and children, as well as SASS, which is Substance Abuse Services Incorporated. I only left DCFS because I adopted one of my clients, who is now my 30-year-old son. And yes, he is still a pain, but he's mine. I have two sons, and they're both grown. I'm a new grandmother now, just as of December 8th, so I'm excited about that. I've spent many days at the ERC up here on Montrose, which is the Emergency Reception Center in this ward, the 46th ward. The conflict of interest with me adopting my son is why I left social services and got a job at the Palmer House Hilton, where again I've been for the last 22 years. I enjoy my new and different career, but my heart and mind led me to do something more. Within a year, my advocacy work started all over again, speaking out against unfair treatment for workers and co-workers, conflict resolution, negotiating for health care benefits, wages, and wage increases. In 2017, as a leader in my union, I advocated for protections against sexual harassment for my co-workers in my industry. This led me to speak out at places like Cornell University in New York, in Congress, and even left off saying even Diane Sawyer felt that our campaign was worthy of coming to Chicago to meet and speak with us. I have been part of delegations to Cambodia. I've been invited for the last 2 years to Geneva, Switzerland, which is the home of the United Nations for workers, to negotiate on a global scale against sexual harassment and gender-based violence. Why am I in this race? Because constant messaging throughout the years, we need people like you in office. We need folks like you to run for this seat, from my family, my co-workers, my peers, and even my bosses. My experience led me here. From the last 30 years, led me here to this moment in time. I've been an advocate for people of many different races, backgrounds, creeds, and colors. People deserve to feel safe and sound. We're in this together, I feel, and I will fight hard for the people in this ward as I have the last 30 plus years. Again, thank you for inviting me. I have some literature over at the table. This is what I like to end on. If you're ever in the Palmer House, stop any of the workers in there and ask them about my reputation. And I know Palmer House is an old historic place, so a lot of people come there. But you can stop anyone and ask them about my reputation over the last 20 years that I've been there, and let them be the voice for me. I thank you again. You all have a wonderful day.
My name is Marianne LaLonde. I'm running for 46th Ward Alderperson. And this is the second time that I'm running for this office. In 2019, I ran and lost by only 25 votes out of 14,000 to our incumbent. I'm a PhD scientist, a former Block Club president, and a progressive leader in my community. I've spent most of my career working in sustainability. I've developed materials for carbon capture in a laboratory, reviewed bill language for federal legislation for chemical safety laws, and worked boots on the ground with factory laborers as part of the largest energy efficiency program in Illinois. I'm hopeful that I can use my background to help increase climate change resilience in the city. I've also been heavily involved in the ward. I serve on the Sustainable Community Schools leadership team at Uplift High School, Clarendon Park Advisory Council, and as the president of the Lakeside Area Neighbors Association for 4 years. You might be wondering why it's important to have a scientist on city council. And it's not just to serve for science-based causes like your doctor here does for healthcare and the environment. I was fortunate to serve in the US Senate with about 30 other scientists, and this is what I learned. We are universally great problem solvers. We're detail-oriented, we look for the potential loopholes in laws that might otherwise get overlooked, and I take a pragmatic approach to problem solving, putting data and shared values over politics. My logical and rational approach means I have zero tolerance for corruption and pay-to-play politics. Since 2017, I've been a member of the Lakeshore Drive Study Task Force, advocating for the integration of community feedback into the design plans. In Uptown, I fought to keep the Wilson ramp open for access to Weiss Hospital, and in Lakeview, I fought to reduce motorcycle noise, expand park access, and protect the tree canopy along the inner drive. Across the whole drive, I fought for accessibility for more residents, including seniors, so that we can enjoy our beautiful lakefront safely. If you're just learning about the potential changes to Lakeshore Drive today, you're not alone. A lot of the plans were developed behind the scenes, which is totally inappropriate. Changes to our community should be transparent and well communicated, and as alderperson, I'll continue not only to solicit public feedback on these changes, but to act on the feedback that I receive from constituents. As a Block Club president, I've consistently fought against new luxury developments in the ward that could increase housing costs and displace long-time lower-income residents. I know how important it is for seniors to have access to affordable housing. There are over 9,000 seniors living in CHA-subsidized buildings like Crowder Place, which Jane Addams Seniors in Action fought to keep open. There have been recent approved zoning changes for developments in South Lakeview at 3660 Lakeshore Drive, in Buena Park at Immaculata, and perhaps most notably in Uptown by Weiss Hospital. In 2019, Weiss was acquired by Pipeline, a company that had routinely closed hospitals, flipping them to luxury real estate. This is a community asset. It serves a primarily Medicare population. It has a stroke center and is also the largest employer in the 46th ward. By early 2021, we were fighting to stop a 314-unit development on Weiss's surface parking lot, in addition to fighting to keep the hospital open to continue serving our community. We managed to unite the other block clubs and reject the zoning proposal by one vote, but about a week later, in an unprecedented move, one group changed their vote to pass the zoning change. Up until that point, no one had ever changed their vote in the history of the committee. We continued to fight the development as it advanced through City Council, and I testified at both the Zoning Building Standards Committee and the Plan Commission. The development eventually passed through, but a collaborative group was born to save Weiss Hospital, which is still active today. Since the zoning change, Pipeline declared bankruptcy and proposed the sale of Weiss to yet another, now third owner, Resilience Healthcare, which confirmed our original fears that Pipeline had no intention of operating Weiss in an ongoing fashion. Final thing I'd like to talk about is sustainability. Chicago is unfortunately behind when it comes to prioritizing the environment. The Department of the Environment was dissolved in 2011 and has yet to be revived. One of the 46 ward's greatest asset is the lakefront, but the Lakefront Protection Ordinance was last updated in 1973 and is no longer adequate to protect the habitat of our endangered birds and piping plovers Monty and Rose called home. I was part of a team that worked to prevent an electronic music concert from disrupting both the nesting birds and treasured small businesses along the beach. And another environmental victory I had was as part of Clarendon Park Advisory Council, where we were successfully able to add ADA accessibility for our 100-year-old community center that will now include senior programming on the second level. If elected, I have a lot of environmental priorities, from creating a clawback program for open space impact fees, to improving recycling rates and adding citywide composting. Like AARP, I hope our ward can be a place where seniors age with safety and dignity, free of ageism and oppression. I will continue to fight for accessibility, both for physical disability and for language barriers and comfort with receiving news either in digital or physical form. I'll work for pedestrian-friendly, wide sidewalks, safe public transportation, and share news transparently. I don't believe that in the very diverse 46 wards spanning multiple neighborhoods that we are having to make a choice between diversity and affordability or between advancing our economic growth. I really think that we can have both. We can be the ward that has it all. And I'd like to be a choice where you can have an alderman that's both brains and heart and experience and passion. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me today on this cold, wintry day, and thanks for those of you who could make it in person. It's nice to see you. It's also nice to see people who are interested in the democratic process of voting, and I appreciate you taking this seriously. During COVID, a lot of things changed.
What's your name?
Patrick Nagle. Sorry.
Thank you.
During COVID, a lot of things changed, and one thing that changed was I became an official member of the AARP when I hit my 50th birthday. I've been to some of your meetings by Zoom, certainly during COVID, and then in this very building a couple times more recently. And I've always found the meetings to be actually very interesting. And the doctor, by the way, if you haven't been here before, the doctor's really good. I've done the standing leg test and had my friends do some of the things that have been recommended. So I do like coming here, and I feel at home here as I've spent the last 31 years living within 5 blocks of this very location, either in Buena Park or in Lakeview. So I appreciate your listening to me today as I kind of give you a little bit of my background and how I envision the job of alderperson in the modern era. Like I said, I've lived in this community for over 30 years. Currently, my wife and I are raising our children over on Gray Street. We've been there for a little over 15 years now. And we really like this community, and it means a lot to us to live here. And one of the reasons why I decided to run for alderperson was because of how much I do care about our community, and because I think that we're at a point where there are a lot of things, a lot of challenges that we're facing as a city and as a ward that need to be addressed, and I think I'm well suited to do that, and I'll explain why. I've spent 28 years in public service as an attorney with the federal government, and the last 13 of which as a judge. The last 6 years of which I've been Chief Judge of the Social Security Administration, which may be near and dear to some of your hearts. 8.7% COLA, by the way, took effect yesterday, so it's the highest we've had since 1982. But as Chief Judge of the Social Security Administration for the country, I oversee approximately 1,500 judges and 8,000 staff, located in 165 different locations across the 50 states and in Puerto Rico and Guam. And during my tenure as Chief Judge, I've had a lot of experience. I've gained a lot of experience in executive leadership. I've run offices before. I've run regions before. Running an entire country is a pretty big task, and I've spent a lot of time working on behalf of the American public, trying to get wait times reduced for people who are seeking services from the Social Security Administration, working to get more money in our budgets from Congress and the White House, who I often am briefing and in discussions with. And I think that over the last 6 years, we've had a lot of progress in reducing wait times and disability claims by 60%, and giving people, who are oftentimes in some of the most desperate and difficult positions, their decisions from a government agency in a much more timely manner than we have before, and I think that's really important. I think it's important that as an alderperson, you also have that sort of same commitment to public service, and that you also are valuing what it takes to provide good service to people. I view the job of alderperson as really twofold. First, constituent services, and the ability of a person to take the job who has the executive leadership experience to run an office and run it effectively, but also to be able to service the people in the ward, because all politics is local, right? And in this ward, things happen and people need services from their alderperson, and they need it timely They need somebody who's going to call them back, somebody who's going to update them on the status of what's going on, and somebody who can help direct you, if they can't provide the service you need, to the person who can. And I think that's job one of an alderperson, is to be able to run a good ward, to get the resources from City Hall that you need in your ward, to fight for the things that you want, so that we can make this as good a ward as possible, and so we can get our fair share of things that people in the ward need. The second aspect, I think, of an alderperson, and I think this is something that's changed over the course of time, and I think COVID really accelerated this change and has made it even more profound than it was before. And that is, I think we look for our alder people now, not just to focus on making sure that the ward operates effectively, but I think there's a realization that an alderperson has to help have an impact on the entire city, because so many of the issues that we're facing right now are citywide issues in addition to just ward issues. And I think it's important that we have an alderperson who can go to City Hall, build coalitions, work with others to actually get things done. I think it's long overdue that we actually try to address in a systematic and analytical way a lot of the problems that we face. And for example, I just saw today that property taxes went up again, as they often do. $614 million more this year. 54% of that is being burdened by homeowners. So if you own a home or if you own a piece of property, you're paying for that. If you're a renter, you're also paying for that, because that cost gets passed down to you from the people who are renting the property to you. So, that's something that we have to consider, especially, and I know many of you probably, like my parents, who also live in the 46th Ward and are on a fixed income and are Social Security recipients, they don't have a lot of extra resources to keep up with the seemingly ever increasing costs of food and utilities and taxes and the other things. It is nice that we got a COLA increase for Social Security, but it seems like we're barely treading water a lot of times, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So it's important as a city that we set budget priorities and that we do a good job of making sure that we're addressing the issues we have, because we really, I think, in the last couple of years have seen somewhat of a retraction in how other people view coming to the city. I travel for work a lot because I work around the country, and I was just in Knoxville, Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and everybody I ran into said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Chicago." They go, "Oh, we would never go there, it's too dangerous." And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't want people to have that perception of our city, but I'm noticing that it's a perception that people have of our city who don't necessarily live in Knoxville, Tennessee, like people live in the suburbs or who live in Milwaukee, or people who more frequently come here. And I'm also hearing from people who actually live in the city who feel that it's not as safe as it was. For somebody who's been here for decades, many of us know what big city life is like, and we don't expect everything to be perfect. We don't expect there to always be peace and tranquility at all times. But I think the increase in things like carjackings and armed robberies, especially in our ward, have really kind of resonated with people, and it's different than people remember it from the past. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office under Patrick Fitzgerald, and I've actually prosecuted armed violent offenders and bank robbers and people who have tried to sell, caches of machine guns and other things. So I have a sense of what it takes to address some of our crime issues. And I think that what we need first and foremost, in addition to more police in our 19th district, which is I think 40% understaffed from where it was 10 years ago. But I think the other thing we really need is we need a comprehensive plan to address crime citywide, where we bring in stakeholders, we figure out what it is that we're trying to do, and that we measure the different tactics that we take to see if they're successful or not. Short-term, mid-term, long-term projects to try to once and for all kind of address some of the systematic issues, but also some of the more present, like today, issues that we're facing with crime, and to balance those so that we can do the whole continuum of what it takes to have ourselves a safer city. And with the safer city comes more tourism money, comes more businesses, comes more people, grows our tax base, and ultimately, hopefully, will help reduce the fact that taxpayers are the ones currently spending an extra $614 million every year in property taxes and things of that nature. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think that I've got the qualifications and the expertise to do it, and I hope I get your support, and I will also leave some literature for you as well. So thank you very much.
Apologies for leaving. My baby's daycare called and it got me worried, so I had to make sure I took that call. I'm just low on oat milk, so all is good. My name is Angela Clay, and I am running to be the next alderperson of the 46th Ward. I have had the amazing opportunity of being born and raised right here in this ward. My family has actually been here for over 80 years. And I just had a baby at the height of COVID, so I am raising a 5th generation of Townian right here within our borders. It has been a real monumental moment to be in this spot, to run for my home and to represent my neighbors who have literally put their all into me as a woman. I have lived all of what our history of the 46th Ward really includes, right? I am a product of affordable housing. I grew up in a beautiful, affordable home on Hazel and Sunnyside that granted me the opportunity to go to some of the best schools that we have in the city. Shout out to Joseph Brenneman. I'm currently on the local school council of my former elementary school. I graduated in the first graduating class of Uplift Community High School, which is the only high school in the 46th Ward, and I was able to go to DePaul because of that beautiful red line system that we have and get a degree in public policy. I became the youngest president of Voice of the People, which is a 51-year-old non-for-profit right here in Uptown that protects and preserves affordable housing, which is really near and dear, and I feel like what a lot of people speak to when they're talking about the 46th Ward, right? At one point, the 46th Ward really mirrored a lot of my own personal history within my family. My family is Irish, German, Native American, and Black, and this was a pocket of the city that my grandparents were able to raise a multiracial family that was safe, that was a stone's throw away from the lake, that was accessible, and because my grandmother didn't have a 8th grade degree, she was able to go to Truman College and actually graduate with a high school degree, right? So all of these resources really are what make the 46th Ward what it is, and it's made me the woman that I am to represent it in the best possible way. I've had the opportunity of also being at the forefront of making sure that our elders are protected and provided for. As a young person, I stomp with those that have gone through the triumphs before myself, okay? You all have history and longevity that I really need, and I surround myself with them to make sure that they are instilling in me the lessons that they've learned. People in the 46th Ward were instrumental in getting the first Black president, the first Black mayor of Chicago elected, Harold Washington, who was instrumental in this city to really bring all different generations together and really make an impact. Those are the same people that are working on my campaign right now, and it's made it very special to myself to be in a position. I am extremely excited because I ran 4 years ago as well, and I came within 367 votes of making the runoff, and that was with no money, y'all, okay? If you know anything about Chicago politics, this town is ran on money. We can talk about that later, okay? This town is ran on money, and it takes a lot of money to run a campaign. We raised only $20,000, all grassroots donations, all people powered, because they saw the vision. They saw that we need a community that continues to be safe. When we're talking about safety, we have to have a conversation, right? Because safety means different things to different people. Safety means street lights. For some reason, I live on Buena and Broadway, and my street lights have been out for over a week now. It is icy, it is dirty, there's dog poop around, I don't want to step into it. That's a safety concern. That's a safety concern. Secondly, we also need to be talking about what are we doing to prevent crime, because right now all we are doing is reacting to crime. We are just saying lock them up and throw away the key, and that is not preventing the actual acts of violence and trauma from happening in the first place. So there is an ordinance called Treatment Not Trauma, where people who actually are having mental health crises are able to get the help that they need instead of being put into a system that's just going to criminalize them and provide more trauma to them, and get them back on our red line systems that they are using for shelter. I don't have to tell you that our public transportation system is being used as a shelter right now. And that is because the city of Chicago has not put their money where their mouth is to put it behind social services and housing for our neediest neighbors. We all live in a ward where we have had an abundance of housing stock, right? We've had single room occupancies, we've had 4-bedroom apartments, we've had the former governor's mansion, for God's sakes. All of that shows you that the 46th Ward has been intentional about the housing and the resources that it provides for its neighbors. Why are we not trying to help our neighbors who are living in tents in some of the worst weather in the entire country? That is number one top priority on my list as alderperson. I also want to make sure that we are building an ecosystem for our elementary schools. We are a community of families, and with families, you need housing. You need proper housing. Families are not raising their children in studios or 1-bedrooms. I know I'm in a 2-bedroom, and it's pushing for me, okay? Not only what are we building as far as housing stock, but the affordability of that housing stock. Our elementary schools depend on our families sending their children to our elementary schools. So if we are not making it easy and accessible for families to raise their children here, we are setting our elementary schools and our high schools up for failure. Last but not least, I want to make sure that we are actually making decisions together. Part of the reason why I ran and said I will stand up and represent this community is because I felt like decisions were not being made cohesively. Some things happen behind our backs that impact us on an every single day basis, right? We were instrumental in fighting for Weiss Memorial Hospital's land to not be privatized and developed because there are over 300 units going up in the surface area parking lot of Weiss Memorial Hospital, and only 8 of them are going to be subsidized. These are hundreds of units. Again, that is a stone's throw away from Brenneman Elementary, that is right in the backyard of Uplift Community High School, that is not going to help push students and families into this institution, right? So I've been instrumental in trying to make sure that we are protecting the safe spaces that we have, that we are making sure that it is affordable to all of our neighbors in this ward. Also making sure that our families are included and that we are making these decisions cohesively. I think that's really what the 46th Ward stands for. It's a pocket in the city that everybody loves to be in. They feel a home here. No matter who you are or what you make, you feel like you have a space to be yourself here. And I want to make sure that I am representing you all. So I am running again to be the alderperson of the 46th Ward out of necessity, y'all. There has never been a person of color in this seat in all of Chicago politics. There's never been an alderman in the 46th Ward that's looked like myself. And I'm so honored to be the person to bring this to the city that we deserve and our community. So I appreciate you. And our literature is going to be on the table too.
Academy is that we share 2 DNA evidence technicians with the Illinois State Police. So the entire state of Illinois and city of Chicago has 2 individuals who can process DNA evidence from a crime scene, which means it takes up to a year and a half to solve a crime and process the evidence, and that is unacceptable. So that's one thing we have to do. Another big component of public safety is the historic disinvestment in communities across Chicago. We need to invest in housing, we need to invest in education, we need to invest in these communities that have been disinvested in to make sure that these individuals also have equal opportunity. But there's another really important part of public safety, and that is the pilot program that's been going on for those going through a mental health crisis. And this issue is extremely personal to me. I will never forget the day when my parents called me. They were driving my brother to his first job out of college, and they said, "Your brother is scared because he's hearing voices in his head saying he needs to hurt his family." And my life and my family's life and his life forever changed in that day. And just talking about it now, it's emotional. And what's heartbreaking is that my mom was a nurse. My dad, before he was a high school teacher, had gone to medical school, and they didn't know what to do. Families don't know what to do. There are not enough resources. I've had to be that person on the other end of the phone calling a police officer and saying, "Please come help my brother and help my family." And knowing that there's not enough resources, not enough places for them to take him, they're gonna take him to the emergency room, he'll be held for a couple of days, maybe 3 days, maybe he'll go to jail, because we always have enough money to lock people up. We never have enough money for treatment, and we can do better. My brother is chronically homeless, will not let me help him. So I am running for office because I'm gonna help other people. If I can't help him, I'm gonna help other people and change the system. Also, when I'm going block to block, I'm hearing a lot about affordability in the neighborhood, and I want you to know that I hear you. And there's two components of this. There's people who have lived in your home for 20, 30 years. Your property taxes are driving you out of your community. And there's individuals who can't even afford to enter the housing market. And that's unacceptable for the amount of property taxes we're paying in this city. We need to do a lot more to rectify this. We need to build more affordable housing in the ward. We need to make sure that we have incentives and exemptions for people to be able to afford the property taxes. And also we have to make sure there's enough funding for city services to help people maintain their homes and help maintain naturally occurring affordable housing. You know, in the porch repair program and in the roof repair program. We need to invest in those areas as well. And I want to increase affordable housing across the board. Another issue that I'm hearing a lot is, you know, helping seniors be able to age in place. We don't have enough resources. I saw as my parents, who have now lost, helped them for years trying to find a way to stay in their homes and have care and not have to leave their homes and go into assisted living. And we have a system where we keep cutting resources for senior daycare, we keep cutting resources for senior services, and the state seems to incentivize not having caregivers being able to go in people's homes, but instead incentivize having people go into assisted living as well. We need to make sure that everyone can have the dignity to live where they want to live and help them age in place, and that's one thing that I'm going to fight for. But the most common thing that I hear besides public safety on the doors is constituent services. It's rats running down Ashland, it's we need more trash cans in the ward, people are concerned when walking down the street they're going to trip on a sidewalk because it's uneven. Constituent services are important. I worked for 10 years for Mike Quigley, 8 years on the county side, he's endorsed me by the way, 2 years on the federal side, and run our constituent services office. I have the experience connecting people with government services and making sure that they can get the resources they need to be able to walk out of their door and have their needs met. And that experience is really important. It's important because you have to be able to build broad coalitions of stakeholders to get things done in the city council. I have over 22 years of experience in government, the nonprofit, and the private sector. While working for Mike Quigley, I don't know how many of you remember the Todd Stroger and John Stroger days at the Cook County Board, but I helped launch the reform movement in Cook County government. I wrote 7 reports on how to restructure and reinvent government, and my policy nerd expertise is working on how we can make government better, and that's something I want to do at the city. After working for Mike Quigley, I worked for a nonprofit health insurance company, if you can believe that those have existed, and learned that you can take the profit out of healthcare and make people's lives better. Currently, I'm working with Walgreens on community and government affairs. I've been working to pass legislation in states across the country to lower the cost of prescription drugs and to deal with organized retail crime where people are going into stores and stealing just shelves for merchandise. But most importantly, for the past 3 years, I've been an instrumental part of the vaccine efforts at Walgreens. I helped open some of the first COVID testing locations in the entire country, and I launched vaccine efforts in 8 different states, including all of our vaccine efforts in long-term care facilities, nursing homes, and our retail locations. I know how to build public-private partnerships and get things done. I would be honored to have your support in this race. I've been currently endorsed by U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, Congressman Mike Quigley, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, State Senator Sarah Feigenholtz, and Margaret Croak, our state rep. And that's because they've known me for over 22 years and they know I know how to get things done, and that's important. So if you send me the city council, I will fight for you every single day. I will help make it the neighborhood that we all love and want to be a part of, and I have the experience to get it done. So thank you so much for your time.
I would like to introduce you to Nick Ward, candidate for the 48th Ward here in Chicago. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, everyone here. I'm Nick Ward. Hi, all of the other candidates. It's good to see you all. I'm a renter. I'm a community organizer. I'm on the local school council as a community representative at Gowdy Elementary School. I'm a theater artist, and I was a restaurant worker for 20 years. And working in restaurants, I worked alongside bussers and food runners who often worked 2 or 3 jobs in far-flung parts of the city. And because most of my money was made off of tips, I worried every night about making enough for rent, bills, and groceries. I spent the last 4 years working at an organization called Young Chicago Authors, which teaches spoken word and hip-hop to young people all across Chicago. So I saw the real need to invest in our youth. It doesn't have to be poetry, robotics, athletics, STEM, whatever. I believe we need to invest in young people, create safer spaces for them to pursue whatever they want in a safe and productive way. And I became politically active in the 48th Ward in 2020. and it was the height of the pandemic and social unrest had just broken out in Chicago. So I worked with the Uptown Buena Park Solidarity Network, getting groceries and resources to working families and seniors in my community. That fall, we got propane tanks and cash to our unhoused neighbors under the viaduct so they could stay warm outside or get a hotel room for a night. I also joined an independent political organization called the 48th Ward Neighbors for Justice, a group of 150 community members organizing in the 48th Ward. One of the first things we did is that we stood on street corners and we talked to neighbors about police accountability and the police budget. Now, I'm sure you can imagine those were not always easy conversations, but we were able to have thoughtful and engaging discussions because we centered respect at the heart of it. And this is where I learned what real leadership looks like. It looks like having the values to help your most vulnerable neighbors. It looks like understanding the complicated policy that gets set at City Hall but that impacts every person, every neighborhood around Chicago. And it looks like approaching people who are different from you with care and respect. I launched my campaign a year ago, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done. I have a full-time campaign manager and a full-time field director, which means I'm able to be out campaigning in every corner of the ward and pop down here to Lakeview on a Tuesday afternoon. I've received endorsements from Northside Democracy for America, the Cook County Colleges Teachers Union, the Illinois Nurses Association, Asian American Midwest Progressives, and the One People's Campaign, which I believe positions me as a coalition builder, working across lines of difference like I just talked about, building multiracial coalitions every single day. And I've opened a campaign office that is right in the heart of the ward, where neighbors from All-American Nursing Home next door pop over every single day for pop, a cup of coffee, or to plug into the work
You want to tell
they're
us where
doing.
it is?
Pardon?
Where it is?
It is at 54 North Broadway. If there are people in there, it is an open space. Please come in. We'd love to chat with you about the work that we're doing. In working with my neighbors at All-American, I learned just how difficult it can be for seniors to access crucial city resources. Whether it's complicated online forms or just figuring out how resources are being distributed. We need to do better as a ward and a city to make sure that seniors are getting the resources they need to live the life of dignity and respect that they deserve. I've also shown up to support striking workers at Starbucks and Howard Brown Health, like I did just this morning at 9 o'clock in Rogers Park. I'm the son of 2 unionized public school teachers, so for me, labor is the hope of the world and the hope that we have for the future, and so it's important for me to support workers both as a candidate and maybe as your future alderman. So I'm really grateful for your time today. It's good to see everyone. Again, it's good to see all the other candidates. And if there are questions later, I'm open to them. But thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
We'll be taking questions at the end of everybody's 10 minutes. So thank you very much, Nick Ward,
Thank you.
46th Ward candidate. Our next speaker will be Andy Peters.
Ready for him?
It's going continuously.
Okay. Hey, I'm Andy Peters. I'm a candidate for a 40th Ward alderman. I grew up in Berwyn, and I attended Warren West High School, which at the time was the lowest funded public high school in suburban Cook County. Then after that, I went to University of Chicago on an Odyssey Scholarship for low-income students and majored economics.
The microphone is here, and you need to speak up.
My senior year of college, I began interning in the City of Chicago Mayor's office, which was my first time working in city government. And then after I graduated, I continued to work in city government, including organizing new aldermanic orientation in 2011, where I learned a lot about how menu dollars are spent and the day-to-day life of being an alderman and how the ward office operates. After that, I worked for the Illinois Restaurant Association, where I was in government affairs and worked on a lot of legislation, notably like the mobile food truck ordinance, which is a real example in terms of how you have to work with stakeholders, build coalitions, and find out from the law department.
Joe Dunne has an audience. You came prepared, Joe.
Yeah, I tried. Should I hold this up like a?
Oh, you don't need to. That's fine.
All right.
It's in the picture.
Perfect. So, thank you for having me. I'm Joe Dunne. I'm a candidate for alderman in the 48th Ward. And I'm running for alderman of the 48th Ward because I really care about the community. I'm a lifelong resident of the 48th Ward. I was born and raised right there. My parents are from the ward. My children are the fourth generation of my family to be living in the ward, and I'm raising them in the same house I grew up in. My wife Jennifer and I bought the house when my mother passed in 2003, and we've been steady residents of the ward, surrounded by neighbors I've known, a lot of them for my entire life. I've been involved in the ward for a long time. I know that community involvement is a fundamental feature of the 48th Ward. It's a great place. The ward is a really great place to live, and that's why we've stayed. It's a great place for families. It's a great place for seniors. We have a strong LGBTQ plus community. We have a vibrant business community, and that comes from community involvement. The ward is built on community involvement, and I've been involved for a very long time, not just because I've been there, but because that's important. It's been instilled in me by my family. I passed petitions in the 90s to preserve the Broadway Armory as a Park District facility. I served on the Edgewater Community Council for a period of time, and when my children started at Pierce, which is our local public school, I joined the Friends of Pierce board and started raising money to support the school, to support the teachers with teacher reimbursements and field trip subsidies so that families didn't all have to come out of pocket to go on field trips. And I eventually became the president of the Friends of Pierce board, and by the time I left the board, we were raising over $125,000 a year to support arts programming and all the other items I mentioned. We had arts partners for every grade in the school, from pre-K up through 8th grade, and it was local arts community organizations from pretty much all theater and some spoken word organizations. Through my involvement on the Friends of Pierce board, I got involved in the local school council, and I ran for the local school council. The first time, it appeared a turmoil for the school. There was a young child, a girl in 4th grade, who committed suicide because of a bullying issue in the school. And there was a real climate and culture problem at Pierce at the time. And there was a group of parents that got together on the local school council and in the community to really change that. So as I joined the local school council, it was the principal review year, and I ran we decided to replace the principal. That's one of the roles of the local school council, is the hiring and firing of the principal, and we made a hard decision. It was a difficult vote, and we voted to replace the principal. I ran the principal selection committee, and we did that intentionally to have a very broad community-based participatory process to find out what do people want in a principal and how do we change the climate and culture of the school. That process ended with the unanimous selection of Lori Zamey, who's still the principal there today. The school has been on an upward trajectory ever since. I think that climate and culture has really changed, and I'm proud to be part of that. And one of the ways that we changed it was by changing the culture to be open and welcoming, to give people an opportunity to come in and share their voices, to really build that community involvement that I've been talking about. So that's very important to me. That's why I'm running for alderman. I also believe that I have the skills from my professional experience to do a great job. I'm an affordable housing developer in the city of Chicago for the last 17 years, I believe. I'm the vice president of real estate development for Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation. Prior to that, I worked for Holston Real Estate Development Corporation, developing mixed income housing and affordable housing throughout the city of Chicago. I've worked in Woodlawn, I've worked in Lawndale, I've worked in Uptown, I've worked in Humboldt Park, Logan Square, I've worked in Edgewater, I've worked in my very home community, and I've worked actually as far south as Joliet and Ford Heights. And similar feature in every community you work in, particularly with affordable housing, which is not always welcome, is that you have to build consensus. You have to work with community groups, you have to work with the aldermen, and you have to work with all of the government agencies that are involved, from the local elected officials down to the city departments, whether it's building, planning, streets and sand, they're all involved. And you have to work with them as a team to get it done. So I've been able to do that successfully, developing affordable housing, helping keep people in their communities for a very long number of years now. I also have experience on the government side. I'm running out of time, so I've been endorsed by Marianne Smith, who's our former alderman. I've been endorsed by Heather Staines, who's our former state senator. I've also been endorsed by the Chicago Federation of Labor and the Local 150 operating engineers. I think I have the skills and qualities to lead the ward forward, to do a great job, to step in and advocate for the community. We need to address public safety. We need to address the cost of living. That's affordable rental housing, that's property taxes, and property taxes are affected.
AARP. I was so glad to see Dr. Bill championing what we have in the North Side, which is our Dame Libby Kamaiko's entrepreneurship in starting her own dance company, which is now housed at Northeastern. And that is one company that my dance supply store sponsors and has been for many, many years.
Small world.
So I am so glad to be uplifted with dance. Dance is very important to me. So as a small business owner, executive, and also as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I know what it takes to coalesce different ideas, to make decisions that benefit my small business, but also for the economic benefit of our entire community. I am also a physical therapist. I graduated from UIC in 1997, and I'm still a physical therapist today. In the past, I worked at Cook County Hospital and working with a variety, all sorts of healthcare professionals, doctors, administrators, and families to center patients to get what they need is so important. That viewpoint is very important right now in City Council. I am also a community organizer. I co-founded two statewide groups, Indivisible Illinois and IL Vote, as well as a local chapter, Indivisible IL9, Andersonville, Edgewater. And all three groups have worked on things that are so important to the ward and to the city and to the nation, including voter registration, which is the cornerstone of our democracy, and also getting out the vote. I've worked with congressional, state, and local representatives, including Jan Schakowsky, who's a champion for the Affordable Care Act, and Heather Staines, who helped pass the ERA in Illinois, and Carol Ronan, who I worked with to register people and get out the vote, and Kelly Cassidy, who's a champion for our reproductive rights in Illinois, as well as the Community Emergency Services and Supports Act, which is the alternative to policing in times of behavioral and mental health crises. We need to rethink the way we are doing public safety and what it means to us. And it helps to have that kind of relationship with our representatives. I'm also a champion for Chicago Public Schools. I am a product of Chicago Public Schools, as are my three kids. They went to Pierce, and I'm glad to see Maria in the audience here today, which I served on the Parent Teacher Service Organization as a secretary. I also brought dance to the International Dance Day for Tango, and that was a lot of fun. I've also, brought the Year of Chicago Dance, which it is, by the way, in 2022, the Year of Chicago Dance to the North Side. And I worked with the Chambers of Commerce, my business, and other dance companies across the city, including 312 Tango, Chicago Tap Theater, Joel Hall Dancers, and so many more. It was a lot of fun and a great community event. This is the kind of thing that we need to do to build community in our ward and in our city. I am running out of time, but I want to tell you that I want this job. I have the passion for this job, and I have the skills to do this job. And I want to center, especially older seniors in the ward. I think about my friend Levita, who grew up in Andersonville with her mother, who's a caretaker at an Edgewater Senior Center. And over the years, she went with her mom to work. She jumped on the beds and she went to the rec centers and played bingo with the residents. And over the years, she built a community with her mother. And now that her mother is growing older and closer to retirement age, she is worried about where her mom is going to age. And seniors should be able to age in place. I am also not only a physical therapist, but I have been a patient in the last 2 years. I've had 2 hip replacements. And because of that, I've had to use a walker on our sidewalks and on our streets and in public transit and infrastructure that includes everybody, no matter if you walk or roll, is very important to me. As alderwoman, I will fight for that. I'm fighting for affordable housing, infrastructure that works for everyone, that is responsible and speaks to sustaining our planet, that centers people's wealth, health, and welfare. We need to rethink how we are doing business so that small businesses, because they are the economic drivers of our communities, are being lifted up, just like Libby Carmichael at Northeastern, who started Ensemble Espanol, and who we enjoy today on the Zoom, and also live performances at the school, and producing such great cultural things. All the amenities that are available in Chicago should be available to everybody, including seniors. I'm running for 48th Ward Alderwoman. You can find me at lenifor48th.com, and I would love to hear from you at lenifor48th.com. I'm fighting because seniors are a part of our community, and when seniors do better, we all do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Brian Haag. If you're wondering how we assigned the time slots, the first person that responded, we just went right down the line every 10 minutes. So there's no particular order. You can hold it even further down so it doesn't look like we're mugshotting you.
I'm Brian Haag. I'm the founder of Green Element Resale in Edgewater. I'm the founder of Green Element Resale in Edgewater. It's been 12 years now. I started with my own money and $150,000 loan from 2 of my brothers, and we're now doing $600,000 a year in stuff that some people call 1-800-GOT-JUNK and have it paid to hauled off to landfills or incinerators. I started Green Element, Big Medicine NFP, because of my environmentalism. It's just like, that's who I am. I was born a tree hugger, I can't help that. I grew up rural along the Mississippi River, one of 10 kids. We have 1 mother, 3 fathers. And I've been a resident of Chicago for 36 years now. A lot of years in anti-war stuff, pro-bicycle stuff, critical mass. I worked my way up in rehab construction as an apprentice helper to master carpenters, tile setters, those kind of guys, and built a small business, then transitioned into Green Element. Saved a building that was falling in on itself while starting a business from scratch. So back to why I think that I would make a good alderman is that, if you can imagine, then doing a rehab on a building while building a small business from nothing, from scratch, that's a lot of juggling. So, you know, I mean, those early years were 80 to 100 hours a week for probably right up until about 2017. Then I've cut it back more to like 60 to 70 hours a week. But if I were elected, I would just cut back. I would use the wage I'm paying myself to hire other people and cut back to maybe 10 hours a week of administrative stuff. That's one of the questions about would you be a full-time alderman. I think that public safety is probably our number one issue right now. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. If we don't have people, I know a lot of people that are afraid to go out at night to support a small restaurant or music or anything, and you can't sustain that for long. Look at Bryn Mawr for all the evidence you need of what's going wrong right now. I think this is okay. So another thing is I live in Edgewater, and I'm definitely a person on the edge. So because the next thing I'm going to say is probably going to be kind of controversial, but it's reality. Part of the reason why violent crime has gone up, muggings, carjackings, all this kind of thing, is because the drug profits are going down. Illegal drugs in the United States was somewhere north of $250 billion per year in cash. Marijuana was 65% of that market. So as those profits collapse and are taken away from the cartels and the gangs, violent crime has gone up. They feel like they got to make their money somewhere. So what we need to do to remedy this, it's a total crime that all these multimillionaire white guys stepped in and got all the marijuana licenses while the black and the brown community has suffered for 40 years under the drug war, under mass incarceration. It broke those black and brown families. And that's part of the problem right now too, of why there aren't the jobs in the South and the West Side. So what we have to do is we have to expand the marijuana licenses. If you take an overlay of the city of liquor stores and bars and restaurants that sell alcohol, why are we only allowed 12 or 15 marijuana licenses, of which black and brown people got shut out? It's a crime right now, what just happened. After the 30, 40 years of mass incarceration and the drug war, and they took the hardest brunt of that, like, it's a crime. And you can count on me to jump in there as a watchdog on any and all of this and try to do whatever I can to help set it straight and to lead. Part of the reason why I'd like to be alderman is I would be definitely an activist legislator. So, you know, every alderman kind of chooses their path or what they're gonna most focus on, and I'll tell you ahead of time, if you vote for me, that's one of the things you're gonna get is an activist legislator. So, what else? In environment, if you check out my website, environment is very key to me, and as we're facing a bug apocalypse on planet Earth right now, we have to plant pollinators in the public way, in the public parks. I also wrote on my website about how pleasant it was to grow up rural and get to eat Concord grapes that grew wild and volunteer, you know, along cemeteries and parks. Why can't we have that on our parklands? Why are we still mowing Kentucky bluegrass, which gives nothing to biodiversity? It actually takes away. And the fact that we're putting all that manual labor into mowing Kentucky bluegrass, which as soon as we experience a little less rain, it turns brown, you know, where native species are drought resistant, they're beautiful, they increase biodiversity for insects, birds, butterflies, bees. These are all the things we need. These are things that I am committed to. And I've been committed to through my activism, but I would enjoy a shot at being committed as part of a legislative body, which is what the alderman really should be. In Los Angeles, all of your constituent services are handled through an ombudsman type office rather than putting all of that on the alderman. So then aldermen, or they're called councilmen there, and they are a legislative body, which was right now, most of what happens in our city council is a rubber stamp for whatever the mayor wants. So I would be there to change that as well.
Thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, this is Larry Svabek.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Svabek. I live at Glenwood and Berwyn, and I am a lecturer and fellow at the University of Chicago in political science. I'm running to bring independent, progressive leadership to the 48th Ward. I think we have a really exciting election coming up in February, and it's a time where we can put in someone who's going to energize city politics and bring bold, fresh ideas to the city of Chicago and to our ward. When you go and knock on doors and talk to neighbors about campaigning, the first thing they always ask is, why are you running? And what brought you here? And I first came to Edgewater in 2011 when I was an undergraduate at Northwestern University. And three qualities really stood out to me. Edgewater had a thriving LGBTQ community that was outwardly proud and welcoming. It had tons of green space and citizens who cared for that green space, and it was a diverse place, not just in the residents, but in the businesses that you could shop at. And so those three things really compelled me to move here, and while I was completing my PhD, I moved up north. I've always been involved in politics. I was raised in a household where politics was kind of emphasized as an important practice you had to involve yourself in. And when I was 10 years old, my mom ran for school board, and that's my first formative political memory. We knocked on doors together, we made buttons, and she really was an advocate for defending arts education in schools, making sure our public schools were up to par. And she also got death threats because she stood up to her colleagues who were violating transparency laws and partaking in corrupt kind of activities. And that was kind of scary for me at a young age, but she really emphasized that we need to have strong leaders who stand up for what's right, even when it comes at a personal cost. And I want to be that leader for the 48th Ward. I got more involved in politics after moving up here, and I was organizing around public safety. So I started with the Civilian Police Accountability Council, that was known as CPAC. And I knocked on doors, I stood at the street corner, I talked to neighbors about the need for civilian oversight of police in the city after the last decade, basically, of all of the well-reported police abuse against our Black and brown brothers and sisters. So got involved in that. When it became clear that we needed to build a broader coalition, I served on negotiations that brought GAPA, the alternative, on board, and we formed the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Ordinance. I helped navigate that through City Council, and that passed in 2021, creating the first civilian oversight of police elected in Chicago's history. So that was very exciting, and from doing that work of coalition building and moving legislation through council, I realized that our City Council needs a new generation to come in who's full of ideas, that wants to make changes that are going to strengthen this place. So today I just want to touch on three issues, although I am running on a platform that names a number of different issues, so if there's something that's not there, please go to larryfor48.org or come talk to me afterwards. So I want to start with public safety. I've spent the most time working on public safety policy, and it's vital that we elect an alderman who's going to see that the ECPS new counselors are going to be implemented in an effective way. So I want to make sure that we use those new counselors that we're electing to engage in community-wide discussions, to actually focus on preventing crime rather than simply responding to it, and to make our community have the kind of strength where it's able to create a place where people are thriving, doing well, and are deterred from making those kinds of bad life choices. I also believe deeply in the mental health first responders program known as treatment, not trauma. I think we live in the 21st century and our city owes us a diverse array of emergency response programs, including programs that are going to help folks who are having mental health crises. And finally, I think public safety is also about pedestrians, being able to walk down the street in a safe way. When I was knocking on doors early on the first month, I met Lois Johnson, who's on the far south end of our ward. And she said she goes up and down the stairs every day, but she's afraid to walk on the sidewalk because she just doesn't feel like it's safe. And so making sure that we put our menu money in places where it's most needed, like fixing our sidewalks, making sure that major thoroughfares like Clark, Sheridan, and Broadway have safety features installed so that folks can get across them. I think that's really important. And I'm also a proponent of the Better Streets Chicago shoveling program, and think that once we get the data back on that on the west side, I think it's going to be a huge success, and we need to rapidly expand that and bring it to the north side. Next, I want to say a bit about affordability, because we've spent the last 3 years seeing housing prices rise. If you're a renter, you've seen those costs go up, and many folks have not seen that same increase in their incomes, especially if you're on a fixed income. And so I want to make sure that we're taking action both in the ward and on the city level to combat that problem. That means passing the accessory dwelling units pilot, because we should allow folks to rebuild their garages, their coach houses, or their basements so that we can increase the density and allow extended family members to come back to the ward. I also think we need to focus on developments that are going to allow people to age in place. I think it's really paramount that as folks age in our community, we have places so that those who don't want to age independently can still stay in the ward. And finally, I want to mention some things about transparency, since that's what was really important to my mom and brought me into politics myself. Chicago has a history of electing leaders who are indifferent to the needs of communities, who cater more to machines and to political parties than they do to the actual folks who live in their neighborhood. And I think we need an aldermanic office that's accessible to everyone and that is taking and actively searching for community input on decision making. I will bring participatory budgeting to our ward. I will expand the outreach that the aldermanic office has, increasing the number of mailers and number of folks who get our e-newsletter. I want to make sure that everyone knows what's happening in the community. And I want to bring that also to City Hall, because I believe that City Hall is right now functioning in a way that's just not working for folks. We're putting aside money for violence prevention, for lead pipe removal, but then that money is never actually getting into the hands of providers. And we need city councilors who are going to hold the structures of our government accountable to actually get money out the door and make sure that we're implementing programs effectively. This is a very exciting time for the 48th Ward. We have to elect someone new. It's scary because our services have been so good these last few years, but if we put in someone who has a bold perspective and is willing to take action, I really think our community will continue to thrive. And I believe that I am that bold, principled leader. Thank you to the AARP Northside for inviting me here to speak to all of you. Once again, the best part about this job is talking to community members, so please reach out to me at larryfor48@gmail.com or go to larryfor48.org to find my campaign phone number. I always like to talk to more folks, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Larry. Our next candidate is Nassir Faulkner.
I thought I was last. And I was like, man, everyone's gonna know that I filled this out like late. So I'm not last. I'm gonna hold this up for a second because this gives off kind of like hostage video vibes if I sit here the whole time. So you see what this
That's
is.
why I told people to hold it, because we get a more view of you than just your head.
For sure. So my name is Nassir Faulkner. I am running for alderman in the 48th Ward to build on our community strengths and to also bring it back to basics approach to constituent services, right? The job of an alderman at the end of the day is constituent services. So when a telephone pole goes down in your neighborhood, you call the alderman's office. When tree branches are going down in a storm, you call the alderman's office. If you need an extra garbage can, call the alderman's office. So I'm really going to focus heavy on constituent services and making sure that myself and my staff are available for all residents in the ward. You know, I'll talk a little bit about my personal background before I talk about my professional background. What had brought me to the 48th Ward was actually work in 2016. So I've lived here for a little bit over 6 years now. Well, not here, 48th Ward for a little bit over 6 years. And so I worked as an organizer on Tammy Duckworth's campaign, her first campaign for Senate. And so I moved up to Winthrop and Argyle, not really knowing much about the community. But it's been such a great time that I haven't left. What I love about our community is the fact that we have everything in, one ward, right? If I walk 2 blocks away, literally almost 2 blocks away, there's a Mariano's. There's an express bus downstairs that I take to go downtown to go to work. I live across the street from Lincoln Park, which is on Marine Drive, right? So I have access to the park and the beach. And so I think, this is a great community to bring your families, raise your families in, and have everything in, one area. So I love it. I plan on living here for as long as possible, win or lose. For me, my personal background, I was raised by my single parent mom for the most part. Although my parents were married for the first 11 years of my life, my dad was not very present. And I also lived in a household that was, for lack of a better word, plagued with domestic violence. So my mom and my grandmother were really big influences on me. And I think those are the two people who instilled public service in my life, right? My grandmother immigrated from Trinidad and Tobago in 1963, and she was a 1199 SEIU nurse's assistant for about 30 years. And on the side, she also used to clean wealthier residents' homes to make extra money. My mom is a licensed clinical social worker as well as a registered nurse. And so I learned a lot about, helping others from my mom in the type of work that she did. What originally brought me to Chicago, I'm originally from New York, is I went to DePaul University. So I graduated from DePaul University in 2016, and Chicago has really been my home, and I've never thought about leaving. So if I talk a little bit about my professional background, I'd mentioned working on that campaign for the last almost 6 years now, which is kind of hard to believe as a 28-year-old. I've worked in state government at the executive branch level for the Illinois State Controller's Office. For the first 3 years, I worked as a program manager, traveling the state, right, which I thought was really great. I traveled over 4,000 miles across the state of Illinois, working with residents, working with elected officials, working with organizations to promote financial literacy in our younger folks, right? Making sure that they're prepared when they leave high school to be able to deal with things like credit scores and owning a car and renting an apartment. But I also spent a lot of time working with organizations and seniors, right, who were dealing with consumer protection issues, identity theft issues. There were a lot of, especially at that time, there were a lot of scams going on. And one of the things that I tell folks all the time, is traveling around the state, there are a lot of people who don't look like me. There are a lot of people who politically don't agree with me. But I learned that most people have the same problems that I had. We just had different solutions to those problems. So that really made me understand that, there really is much more in common than we think sometimes because we're in our bubbles. But somehow we have to work through that. So I think, having that government experience is going to be really important. Before I talk to you now about, what I want to work on, it's important for me to describe how I'm going to do it, right? I think Larry mentioned accountability and transparency. I think that's really important. So I'm going to have issue-specific advisory council set up, right? So housing, public safety, infrastructure, environment. There's probably going to be a lot more than that. Just named a few. Where I bring residents and community groups, community organizations together to work with me on the issues, right? I think a lot of times elected officials think that they have all the answers. I do not have all the answers. I will not pretend like I do have all the answers. And I think it's better when we bring, neighbors from our community together to work on the issues that are impacting all of us. That way I am, up to date with what the community wants and I'm actually doing what folks are looking for. Top issues that I'm going to focus on are definitely going to be public safety, right? I think in our ward in particular, and this is based off of CPD stats, which frankly could not be too accurate. armed robberies, carjackings have gone up, right? So we have to find ways to combat the armed robberies and the carjackings that are happening within our ward. So I think, there has to be a balanced approach. There are some folks who are saying that we need thousands and thousands and thousands of more police, and then there are some folks who are saying we need absolutely no police. So we have to find a balanced approach, because if we don't compromise, we won't actually deal with the public safety concerns that people are concerned with. So I am going to work with CPD in areas where I can, so that we can come up with local strategies to address those increases in crime. But then on the city level, I am going to work tirelessly with colleagues on anti-poverty measures. Because at the end of the day, if people are poor, they are going to be desperate, right? And a lot of folks believe that in the 48th Ward, all of us, we have a ton of money. Frankly, on the north side, folks think that all of us are well off. And so I think we're seeing a lot of the crime because there are communities within our city where residents are struggling financially. And they are desperate because they are trying to take care of their families just like we are trying to take care of our families. So I'm really going to work hard with colleagues to make sure that we are putting together proposals that will make sure that economic opportunity in our city is equitable and that it is open, especially to our young people. Housing is going to be a big issue for me. I'm a renter. I live with my girlfriend. I'm pretty lucky, right? Frankly, if I didn't live with my girlfriend and we didn't share some of the responsibilities, I myself would probably be priced out of this ward living here. So I understand renters who are concerned about the cost of living, and I know how important it is for there to be housing options so that we can keep that diversity in our community. If people can't afford to live here, we're gonna lose the diverse members, because those are the members who are struggling the most to make ends meet. Public school funding is going to be high up on that list. I went to public schools my whole life until I went to DePaul University. Public schools is how we're going to get to young people, right? Like, public schools is how we're going to get to young people so that they don't find these other alternatives that have them out here committing some of the crimes that we're seeing. I think we need to push state government to give more money for public school funding, right? We need more money for social workers. There are thousands and thousands of students who are dealing with trauma at schools. And if they're dealing with trauma that I've experienced, right? And there are kids who are dealing with worse. They're dealing with relatives who've been gunned down. They're dealing with friends at school who've been gunned down. They are not going to be able to take their studies seriously. So I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that we are able to get those students help so that they can focus on their education, which will put them in a better position to succeed in life. The environment's going to be really important, for all developments. I'm going to make sure that we have landscaping plans so that we're adding vegetation to the ward, so that we're adding public spaces for the community to take advantage of, not just the folks who live in the new developments. Transportation is going to be really good, right? If you look at the census from this past, 2 years ago now at this point, close to 40% of our neighbors are commuting to work on public transportation. So we need to make sure that it's safe, we need to make sure it's reliable, and we need to make sure that buses and trains are running on time. 3 quick reasons why I think I am the best candidate to be the next alderman in the 48th Ward. I think, as Larry mentioned, I'm beating Larry by 1 year here, so I'm the youngest candidate in the race. I think we need new and fresh perspectives to our government, right? Our generation is now the largest voting bloc. I think it's time for younger people to stand up and to participate in our political system and our processes. So I think I can bring a fresh, new perspective. I work in state government already, so I understand the bureaucratic process, right? Like, that's the most important thing. We need someone who's going to be able to understand government, how it works. Again, I don't have all the answers. It doesn't mean that I know everything, but I won't be completely lost on day one. And I know how to work with other elected officials and community groups, especially those groups and elected officials who are not in the same party as me. And then lastly, which I think is the most important, is I can actually relate to the people who are dealing with the problems that they're dealing with, the folks who actually need representatives and alderpersons who are sticking up for them, right? The issues that a lot of our residents are facing are issues that I've faced. And I think the reason why we have such a divide between elected officials and their constituents is that a lot of constituents feel like their leaders can't relate to them. And that's not to say that they're not, trying their best, they don't have good intentions, but if you don't understand what it's like to have a parent that works 2 jobs, when you don't understand what it's like to have, to live in a community where violence is rampant, then you're just not gonna really know how to get to the root causes of these problems and give solutions. So I'd end with, if you're looking for a ward that's more inclusive of all its voices and a ward that continues to lead on progressive issues, join me and let's keep building a community that we, love to call home. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Nassir Faulkner.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Volkmann, and I am running to be an alderman in the 48th Ward. I get my glasses. I am in denial that I need them. I had been in denial I need them, but I definitely do. So I've lived in the 48th Ward for the last 25 years. I've raised my family there, I'm a neighbor there, and I'm a homeowner. I understand very deeply how much property taxes is affecting the affordability of our families, and I wanted to tell you what I bring to the table and how I will work with you in order to help resolve some of the issues that we face specifically in the 48th Ward. A little about myself. I have been working in the federal government for the last 30 years. I started off in the 90s where I worked for a US Senator. When I worked for the Senator, one of my jobs was the Director of Constituent Services. So it's very, very critical to me that the constituent services, the needs of our community, are actually met. And I'm going to throw this out right now. This is my biggest nightmare. I have the teeniest, tiniest voice, and when I walked up, I saw no microphone and a huge room. So if you can't hear me, raise your hand or shout out at me. So as Director of Constituent Services with the Senator, one of the things I did is I helped to make sure people got their Social Security on time.
You want to stop just a minute? Could you tell them to keep it down? I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, not at all.
But you do have a little voice, and you need to protect.
I have a little voice. Okay.
We want to catch what you say.
Actually, I was going to stand up, but everybody else sat down, so I thought I would too.
You could stand if you like, if that's better for you.
Would you mind, just because you actually will hear me? Thank you. Okay. All right.
That works.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I am, like I even mentioned, a resident in the 48th Ward. I absolutely love living here, and like many of you, public safety has become a big concern. I'm afraid to walk on the streets. My neighbors are afraid to go out. We don't feel comfortable anymore, and our safety is an issue. I hate to say this, but it briefly crossed my mind. What if I moved to the suburbs? And I decided, what the heck am I thinking? I will never move to the suburbs. This is my home. I love it. So I decided not only is my choice going to be to actually stay here, my choice was to double down. I was going to double down, continue to raise my family here, and bring my mom over from downtown so that she could actually live closer to me so that she would have all the services and I would be close enough to her. I also brought my son in the 48th Ward. My son is 21. He loves the community. Last year he created an event for the Bryn Market where we brought in 2,000 people and collaborated with the current alderman, and it was wonderful. It brought back vitality to the community, the kind of thing that we're missing right now. He actually said he might run for office, so there was a small chance that maybe I would have been here today, he might have been here today, but I'm very proud of being able to have raised my family in the 48th Ward. I have a proven track record. I've worked with so many departments at so many different levels of government, federal, state, and local city. I know that we get our work done by the relationships we build with these other departments. I plan on keeping as much of the staff that is now in place because they already have a relationship not only with the community members, but they also have a solid relationship with the departments and they know how to serve our community, and that is critical. I also have my expertise in the federal government is housing. fair wages, and urban development. But working with the senator, I've also had an opportunity to talk about civil rights and education and so many other issues that affect us. I would say that the petition process has been very, very humbling for me. And yet I loved it. It gave me a chance to walk out, to go see my neighbors. I spoke with hundreds of people, and it was amazing. I did not want to be so presumptuous to think that my issues, what I decided was important to me, was necessarily the issue that everybody else faced. I had the opportunity to talk with them during the petition process, and I learned, yeah, some of these issues really are the issues we all face, like public safety. Public safety is our #1 concern. There's no getting around it. And with public safety, I really think that we have an opportunity here, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. With public safety, I want to work with the police department, but I want to do smarter hiring, I want to do better training, and I also want to make sure that there really is clearer accountability. One of the things that I have learned recently is there's something that's called a crisis intervention class. That sounds like a great idea to me. Everybody should have crisis intervention. But I learned that crisis intervention was not necessarily something that was taught across all of the police department officers. It was taught in gangs and maybe some other places, but crisis intervention, what an officer himself told me, and he's leaving, is a program or a training that all of the officers should have, and they should have annual annual refreshers for this training. The other thing I know that we miss a lot, we miss our beat patrol officers. They were part of our community. We knew them by first name, they knew us by first name. They could say, hey, I know you should be in school right now, get your butt over there. There's a lot of things that the beat patrol officer did for us, and I really will work hard to bring that person back to our different areas within the 48th Ward. I'm also concerned about affordability and revitalization. In terms of affordability, I have a proven track record in being able to bring funding in. I know where funds exist. Now, those that are non-traditional. So we always get funding from the federal government in terms of community development block grants and small business grants and things like that. But there's many other pieces of money that we could bring back into the community. I know that the Inflation Reduction Act introduced a lot about medical benefits to our community. Let's make sure we're getting all of those. We had the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and when they did that, there was many opportunities where not only does the city of Chicago apply, but communities can directly apply. And I think that it's unfortunate we've missed a lot of those. Another example would be that there was a $400 million grant that recently expired in December. It was meant for homeless veterans. It would provide housing and it would provide training. And in August, as of August, they actually created 398 jobs. 398 jobs for a $400 million program is shameful. We should have had that information at the constituency level. We should be working with the homeless encampments. We should be working with our community to make sure everybody knows all of the opportunities that are there. We don't want to waste the money, and we certainly don't want it to go back once it's been earmarked for a really good cause, because once it goes back, it's never coming until another act is passed. So, of course, I support women's issues very much, reproductive rights, equal and fair pay. Chicago's done a pretty fantastic job about it. So,
quiet, please.
So I actually think another issue that we could address right now is the issue of mental health. And I want to bring much more mental health funding into our communities, but I want to make sure that there's accountability, that those funds are being spent properly. We have many for-profits, and I've discovered sometimes all it takes is some communication between us. I learned that one of the nursing homes actually gave day passes, but what I was told by a neighbor is that those day passes could only be used, and then they were taken back if you came back to go to the bathroom. Well, that doesn't make sense, and that's not a good neighbor. If you're someone who has mental health issues, and you're being forced back in an inhumane way to go back, can you guys still hear me?
Quiet, please.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. I'm very sorry.
Oh gosh, no worries. I will talk fast just because I feel like I'm going over time, but I'm not sure exactly how much.
You're getting close.
Okay, I will keep talking fast. Anyway, so goodness, it just totally knocked me off my track. I'm gonna run. So I'm right off of Bryn Mawr, And in Bryn Mawr, we have almost a blighted community. How do we fix that? I would work obviously with the Chamber of Commerce. We want to encourage small businesses, can get small business granted and small business loans. But I also discovered, there's other ways to look at this. If you think about it, why have those storefronts been empty for so many years? Well, I discovered it's because building owners get a rebate if they don't have filled spaces. Where's the incentive to be able to fill those spaces? Where's the incentive to bring those buildings back in? You'll notice that on Bryn Mawr, there's specific buildings who have large empty spaces.
Exactly.
And we will not be doing that. We will, as a city council, we can actually take an ordinance. Now that's a county issue because it's taxes, but at the same time, we can actually do something in an ordinance level to make sure that there is no fraud and no abuse of those opportunities. The final thing is that I will have a very transparent office. It's important that we bring the community to many seniors and many older adults. I want to make sure that we have members of the office going on a regular basis to the buildings to talk to you. It's hard to come back into crossing the street and worrying about our safety when we cross the street and worrying about getting hit by cars. We will bring the office to you. We will also make sure that you get those additional resources. You'll get the banking that comes there from the community and local banks. You'll get not only the alderman's office, but you'll also get health services and things like that. So I understand that the last thing is I also mentioned open offices. Not only will we come to you, but I will have an office I don't want to call it an advisory council, I call it a think tank, but it's to have all the leadership in our community, that valuable leadership, actually come together and talk about issues before those decisions are made. As a neighbor, I hate the fact that I'm invited to open dialogues and I get there and it's like, oh, you're telling me what you've decided already. This isn't a dialogue, this is me listening to a monologue. So I will make sure that before those decisions are made, we are all at the table. And the last thing, I want to say thank you to all of my other candidates. I love all of them. I have never been so blessed to understand that we have a community that cares. And I think that the number of candidates we have today just shows that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Roxanne Volkmann. Thank you very much. You're going to have to talk loud.
Andre Peloquin is my name. I'm running for 48th Ward Alderman. 48th Ward, we consist of 3 neighborhoods that are very interconnected: Edgewater, Andersonville, and Uptown. For the last 7 years, before 2 years ago, I was a renter in Edgewater along the Bryn Mawr corridor at Sheridan Road. And then recently was able to, 2 years ago, purchase my very first condo and own some property here in the neighborhood. I got my first condo with my wife, Hannah, and our beautiful pit bull Labrador mix, Oscar. In the Margate Park area of Uptown, we have had basically, it's a great neighborhood to live in. I've chosen to live in the 48th Ward for just shy of a full decade now, and don't have any plans on moving for the foreseeable future. You've heard from a lot of candidates today. All of us are great. I would vote for any one of us. However, I think I'm the best candidate just because I have very much been involved in whatever I do in my life. I always want to give back, whether that's through service or political campaigning, getting people out to vote, as well as in my day job, which is a residential real estate agent. I do that by helping families purchase a home, buy a home, sell the home, maybe get equity out of the home so that they can move on to their next chapter, as well as maybe do an investment as well and build institutional family wealth to be able to pass on to their children. Here, a couple of our other candidates. You've heard a lot from us today. I would say we probably agree on about 90% of all the issues. There's so many issues that affect our communities when it comes to public safety and crime, when it comes to the public funding of our schools. How do we get that money and to get them properly funded? How do we get our neighborhoods to have properly working and not broken sidewalks? Constituent services, as you might have heard earlier, ward services, is 80% of the job. If we don't have the next alderperson who needs to be absolutely neighborhood focused, responsive to the community, and absolutely available and held accountable, if we don't have working sidewalks, or small independent businesses that are the backbone of our local economy, then what is our neighborhood? We're no longer unique, and we're no longer, we all love to be able to do our holiday shopping along Clark Street, support local businesses. I've seen a deterioration over the years, as many of us have. Bryn Mawr corridor currently is really, really hurting. That was my former neighborhood, as I had mentioned earlier, and I'm very concerned about how it is now, as well as what the future 4 years could look like. We as a city, at the city level, not ward level, we have a lot of very important issues coming down the road. I do believe that we will have issues come before the city council that will involve a vote to say yes to higher property taxes, which is not just an increase on homeowners, but then also gets passed down to renters. In addition to that, I believe we will see, with that hard decision votes that need to be made, that we will have an opportunity to have less city services, and that's just, quite frankly, unacceptable. We here in the 48th Ward have had a history, politically speaking, it's okay, I can talk to everybody, we in the 48th Ward have had a history of pragmatic, progressive politics. That is from current Alderman Harry Osterman, who I believe has done, overall, he and his team have done a great job over the years. Nobody's perfect. We can always improve on what past leaders have shown what we can do. Absolutely, by taking a community approach through not just, as you heard earlier, I have all the answers. I don't. I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen to people, our constituents, and those that want to be involved in our neighborhoods and communities. As well as my top 3 priority issues would be public safety and crime, improving our local business and small business owners, making that basically easier to open up a storefront along Bryn Mawr, be able to cut some red tape so that we can have a thriving community down there again. I live along the Argyle Street corridor, and while they're struggling as well, there's basically a lot of empty storefronts as well, but there's a great program that's currently out there, our Thursday night Argyle Street Night Markets. I wish we could do it all year. We have a little thing called Cold in Chicago, unfortunately. But that is not an economic development program. That is a public safety and crime program. When you get 5,000 people out there on the street, we have an opportunity to show our community that we care, that we're out there, and we want to participate and not just hunker down and let criminals run the street. We very much, my third issue would be absolutely, and I live along the lakefront, so environmentalism is certainly a huge thing for me, sustainability, and making sure that how we can better address, especially up to our Sheridan Road condo owners, we are experiencing a lot of flooding issues in those buildings. Increasing your HOA fees. I'm an HOA board director, by the way, full disclaimer. And don't hate me. But within those buildings along Sheridan Road, we have a massive problem that is your flooding insurance is going up. You can tell me the numbers, but very much higher than they used to be due to lake levels increasing in our climate change, and that's basically, those are some issues that we will be addressed here as a city coming down the pipeline. Lastly, I basically want to thank AARP Northside to having us today. Really appreciate it. Currently, our senior community is the highest level of voters that show up in a municipal election in an off year during the middle of winter in Chicago. I want to thank you, as well as continue that trend of getting our millennial generation, and I know I have some gray hair, so you might not think I'm a millennial, but I want to help increase that voting block as well, so that we can get everybody at the table, keep our community diverse, safe, and have a livable place to call home. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Andre. Our last speaker is Isaac Freilich Jones.
I'll scooch right up so that the camera can hear me. My name is Isaac Freilich Jones, and first let me express my deep gratitude for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Isaac Freilich Jones. I'm an Edgewater resident, an assistant Illinois Attorney General, a local volunteer, and a candidate for alderperson. I was born right here on the far north side of Chicago, not far from where I live today. I grew up shopping on Devon and Clark, spending my summer days at Foster Beach. But my presence in this race is in some ways not very likely. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I made it through because of a community that rallied around my family, because I was lucky to have decent health insurance that came through my parents' employment, and through the quiet determination of my single mom, who found the strength to do the impossible each and every day. That experience left me with an abiding belief in the power of community, and it imbued me with a lifelong commitment to giving back. So after graduating from the University of Chicago, instead of taking the Wall Street job offers that came my way, I came back to the far north side, to Edgewater, with the vision that a life well lived is a life of service and a life of volunteerism. I worked as an advisor to nonprofits, government agencies, and philanthropies. With them, I spearheaded community engagement efforts focused on sustainable, ethical, green economic development, and helped lead programs that placed hundreds of people in new jobs during the Great Recession. But because I saw that even the best of intentions too often fall short, I enrolled in Harvard Law School to study what it takes to truly build just and equitable communities. Returning to Edgewater again after graduating Harvard, I continued my work in the neighborhood. I volunteered regularly at Care for Real, stocking shelves early on Saturday mornings when much of the city still slept. And as a nonprofit leader at Howard Area Community Center, I helped bring millions of dollars of essential services to the far north side. Finally, as an assistant Illinois Attorney General, I've kept Illinoisans safe by fighting to keep dangerous firearms off of our streets and litigating to protect essential public health policies during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, I'm running for alderperson because we need experienced, community-centered leadership with a clear vision if we're to navigate the after effects of this global pandemic, a changing economy, and a transformed city. Because even though we live in one of Chicago's great neighborhoods, all of these changes have put pressure on our community too. We see that pressure in the increased number of vacant storefronts on Bryn Mawr, Devon, Clark, and more. We see that pressure in the sense among some neighbors that our streets are not as safe today as they used to be. We see that pressure in statistics from DePaul University, showing that about 40% of our neighbors in the community are cost burdened when it comes to housing, meaning their housing costs, whether rental or mortgage, are so high, they're at risk of not meeting other essential payments. And we see that pressure in data from Care for Real, which saw a shocking 332% increase in people seeking services in just the last year. So while the strength of our community is real, the challenges we face are also real, and so is the need to take action now. Now, I'm running with unmatched experience and impact as a public servant, as an assistant Illinois Attorney General, and a comprehensive vision for what it will take to make our ward succeed. Our full platform is on our website, www.isaacfor48.com. But today I'd like to focus on 4 of the specific ideas that I'm fighting for. First, bringing back our commercial corridors. It's become impossible to miss the increased number of darkened windows where there were once thriving businesses. That's why one of my first priorities as 48th Ward alderperson will be to rally neighborhood stakeholders around a common cause, helping fill vacant storefronts with local independent businesses that will succeed for years to come. Second, housing. Our community has few affordable options suitable for families. In fact, less than 18% of the housing units in our community have 3 or more bedrooms. And among affordable units, that number falls to the single digits. So if you have a growing family or taking care of a relative, you just can't stay in the neighborhood. There aren't units for you. It's time for a change. We need a new approach to affordability and affordable housing here in the 48th Ward. Let's make a long-term commitment to changing and fixing this imbalance. Third, safety. It's essential we get safety right, and it's essential that we do it the right way. That's why my plan for safety focuses on 3 key pillars. First, we need to fight the root causes of violence through social services and economic opportunity programs throughout the city of Chicago, so that everyone has hope no matter what neighborhood you happen to be born in. Second, we need to use our built environment to keep the community safe. So let's make sure that our underpasses are well lit. Let's make sure that our street lamps illuminate the sidewalks and not just the center of the street. 3, we need to reimagine policing. We need to get away from an over-reliance on militarized approaches that just have not worked, and go back to a model based on foot patrol officers whose names you know, whose faces you recognize, who are in the community. Finally, good government and community involvement. As alderperson, I will be committed to an unprecedented level of community involvement in decision-making. That means spending ward menu money, using a participatory budgeting approach, and complete transparency when it comes to all zoning and traffic pattern decisions. And a commitment to ensuring that when you have an issue that's important to you, the 48th Ward office will react quickly and responsibly to your needs. But it also means a zero-tolerance policy for the insider deal-making and same old business-as-usual Chicago politics that's blighted our community for so long. We deserve better, we can do better. So, in the words of one of my favorite Chicagoans, architect Daniel Burnham, let's make big plans, let's aim high in hope and work, and build the 48th Ward that we know we deserve. If you believe, as I do, in independent progressive leadership, if you sense, as I do, that our future can be even brighter than our past, then I ask you to join me and give me your vote on February 28th. Thank you.
Thank you very much.